The Washington Wizards are bad, like really bad. Although they were able to get a huge win over the Nuggets, which today brings their record to a whopping 3 wins and 21 losses. And believe it or not, it's even worse than it sounds. Just last month, they were able to complete no-win November, making them one of very few teams to not get a single win throughout an entire month. The Wizards were on a 16-game losing streak going into that Denver matchup and currently have the worst record in the league by far. These aren't close and competitive games either, they're losing in blowout fashion on a nightly basis. Out of their 21 losses, only one of them has been by less than double digits. They've had 20 blowout losses in 24 total games. The Boston Celtics have more wins in Washington than the Wizards do. I genuinely think this team is worse than the Detroit team that lost 28 games in a row. The Pistons were really bad last season, but they lost several close games in heartbreaking fashion. The Wizards aren't even pretending like they're trying to win. Also, let's not forget the fact that they only won one more game than them last season, but nobody cared because the Pistons had one of the biggest losing streaks in NBA history. Washington literally has the worst offensive rating and the worst defensive rating. Right now, they're the worst team in the league on both sides of the floor. I mean, we're a quarter way through this season and the Wizards are allowing their opponents to score almost 124 points a game. And on average, they lose by over 15 points every time they step on the court. They've already been outscored by 380 points. It's not looking good at all, and you can solely blame this on Kyle Kuzma for cursing them. In the middle of that Pistons 28-game losing streak last season, Kuzma tweeted, "At this point, it's like don't be that team." Which is extremely ironic looking back at it, but it was ironic when he originally tweeted it too. Not only would they go on to finish only one game ahead of them, but now they're sitting at the bottom of the entire league with nobody else around them. Being 3-21 in the West is one thing, but being 3-21 in the East is a completely different story. But really, there are multiple reasons why the Wizards have been so bad this year. First of all, Cooper Flagg is in next year's draft. Second of all, the roster is simply not very good, and all the players that do have at least some promise are all extremely young. The team just has no identity, which is kind of understandable when you're on pace to win like 10 games. However, there still is some good news for the organization. The Wizards have been a poorly run franchise for the last several decades, but they're finally actually going into a direction. Yeah, that direction might be straight down, but having a direction is better than not having one at all, which is where the team has been over the last several years. They were winning just enough games to not get one of the top picks, while not winning nearly enough games to be competitive. They've tried trading for players and making moves that kept them in the same spot for years, and it's done absolutely nothing for them. But ever since their new general manager Will Dawkins took over, they've actually committed to a full rebuild. Which it absolutely sucks that that's what it takes to turn things around, but that's just how it works. It might suck to see and go through as a fan, but honestly you should be happy they're now doing something they should have done a long time ago. 2018 to 2023 alone is worse than a couple flat-out bad seasons for a few good picks. Then from there, all they have to do is hit on those draft picks, which isn't something the Wizards are the best at. But with them picking hopefully in the top 3, they won't be able to overthink it as much as a borderline lottery pick. Right now, the team is being led by NBA champions Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, although Kyle has already been in and out of the lineup. Jordan Poole has actually been pretty decent. He's had some incredible games like his 42-point night against the Spurs where he shot almost 70%. And by the way, that was the only game where they lost by less than 10 points. However, Jordan has also had some really bad games and moments as well. He's obviously not a superstar or even an all-star caliber player right now, but he's also not as bad as a lot of people think. He's been one of the only actually consistent players. Kuzma, on the other hand, has definitely been struggling. His averages are down a lot, and there's been a few games where he's been an all-around net negative. Kuzma is shooting 42% from the field and less than 28% from 3. Then on top of that, he's averaging more turnovers than assists while also not playing any defense. I think it goes without saying that it's probably not a good thing when your two top scorers and leaders both don't play any type of defense. And unfortunately, Kuzma's almost 30 years old. He kind of is the player he is at this point. He's definitely better than he's playing right now, but even at full force, the team isn't that much better. He's a really deceiving player. His good games give you a lot of hope, but his bad games sometimes are really bad. However, he obviously isn't the only player that's struggling. 7 different players for the Wizards are shooting less than 30% from 3, and a lot of them are on the border of shooting less than 40% total. Plus, they only have a few guys that could truly be considered good defenders. The Wizards have dealt with some injuries here and there, but they can't use that as an excuse like the Pelicans. Alex Sarr, their second overall pick that they just drafted last season, hasn't started off very good, but he has shown flashes of how good he can be, especially defensively. However, he is one of the guys on the team shooting less than 30% from 3 and is somehow shooting less than 40% from the field as a 7-footer. His offense can still use a lot of work, but we knew when he was drafted that he was going to be a pretty big project type of player. Lots of upside, but there was going to be a good bit of ups and downs along the way. It also doesn't help that he's playing within an offense that doesn't take advantage of anybody's strengths. Another promising young French player for the Wizards is Bilal Coulibaly, who's someone I've been pretty high on from the very beginning. Like Alex, Bilal was another project player coming into the league. Bilal is also a defense-first player that needs to continue to get better on offense. He started the season off really strong, but then had an 8-game stretch where he shot 22% from the field and less than 14% from 3. That's all while averaging 7 points in 35 minutes a game. But he's still shown that he's got a ton of potential, and like I said, playing within this current Wizards offense doesn't help. Bub Carrington is the other rookie that the Wizards drafted, and he also seems pretty promising. He looked really good in the Summer League and has actually been one of the more consistent players on the team. His numbers aren't anything crazy, but as a rookie guard, he's actually been pretty good. Then they also have guys like Corey Kispert, Justin Champagnie, Keyshawn George, and Jared Butler, who are all super young. Not to mention their leading scorer Jordan Poole is still only 25 years old. And add in whoever they get in the draft. Next season could be a lot better depending on how some of these young players develop. Basically everyone on the team is under contract to come back next year except Malcolm Brogdon and Marvin Bagley, with most of them being under contract for even a year or two after that. Their new head coach this year is Brian Keefe, and although things aren't off to a very good start, I'm not sure there's really all that much he can do at this point. Obviously they can be better in several aspects, but with the current roster they don't have many options. They could run the greatest offense of all time, but the team and fit just isn't there. And by the way, the last time a coach finished their Wizards tenure with a positive record was back in 1999. But winning right now clearly isn't the main goal, and as much as tanking sucks to go through, it is the right move. Continue to develop your young players and see where they can take you in the future. Then with that group, they can try to usher in a new culture, because this franchise hasn't had a real winning culture in a long time. The last time the Wizards finished a season with 50 wins was in 1979. They have gone close, but still, not to break the 50 win mark for that long is crazy. So hopefully the rebuild era will be over sooner than later and Washington will finally be able to compete once again.